And that's it for round one of the 2011 playoffs. And what a round one it was. Here I am to wrap it up and give you my thoughts on round two. Let's get to it. Welcome to the penalty box. Alright, here we go, late again, but that's the nature of the beast. A few random thoughts to wrap up round one. I want to take a second to claim bragging rights. I got 7 out of the 8 series right for round one. That's why you come to Heffiewiggle for your hockey analysis and predictions. Anyway, here's my first thought. Holy overtime, Batman! The first year I did these playoff videos, it was the year of the sweep. Last year, it was the year of the upset. This year, it's the year of overtime. 14 overtime games in the first round alone. 3 of those were in Game 7s, including Game 7 of both Canadian series. Many of those going to double overtime. Unheard of, but it makes for some of the most exciting hockey. Speaking of Canadian teams, Vancouver advances by beating Chicago. It was almost eerie how right I was about that series. In case you don't remember, here's what I said. Ultimately, I think the matchup with Chicago was a mental block more than anything else. They just need a couple of wins to get their confidence going, because if the Blackhawks get into their heads, it could be scary for Canada's Western hope. Well, down 3-0, Chicago wins one and momentum starts to shift. Luongo gets chased from the net, in comes Corey Schneider, and they still lose. But they dug deep and pulled it out, and like I said, remove that mental block and they go deep. Speaking of goalie troubles, how about that situation in Philadelphia? They've used all 3 of their goalies in the first round, Boucher, Leighton, and Bobrovsky, and all 3 of them were at some point chased from the net. Not a good sign if they hope to make a repeat trip to the final. It seems Boucher is back as their number 1, but God only knows how long that'll last. Speaking of which, that series had the best sound bites, with Mike Richards accusing Buffalo of getting away with murder, and then Miller firing back accusing Philadelphia of getting away with mass murder. Good times. Another moment from the East that caught my attention happened in the Pittsburgh-Tampa series. So Tampa leads a charge up ice, there's a little hacking and whacking happening in front of the Pittsburgh net, a scrum ensues, you know, standard stuff. Then Victor Hedman and Chris Letang start to go at it, but before anything can happen, the refs start to break them up. Then with Hedman mostly tied up, Letang gets a hand free and totally sucker punches him to the temple. So Hedman gets a hand on Letang's face and gives him a retaliatory face wash. But believe it or not, both players get penalized with a 2-minute minor for roughing. Now, I've been watching hockey a long time. I didn't know you could get penalized for getting sucker punched. Moving on to the West, 2 of the series there surprised me. First off, Detroit versus Phoenix. It appears I overestimated the Desert Dogs. I mean, Detroit just won in a walk. That series really should have been closer. Oh, and with the Hulsizer deal to keep the Yotes and Glendale essentially dead, it looks like the Winnipeg Jets could be coming back home. Thanks, Goldwater Institute! And as for the only series in the first round that I got wrong, Anaheim versus Nashville. Once again, I underestimated Nashville. Teemu Selanne was the leading scorer in the playoffs of the first round, and the Ducks still lost. Rene played alright, but Nashville just sprung to life at the perfect time. They deserve credit, but as the lowest seed entering the second round, their road only gets tougher from here. Alright, like I said, quick wrap up, on we go to the second round. You know the drill, blog down here we go. The Washington Capitals versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. This could get interesting because these two teams are very similar. Rolison and Neuvirth's stats are very similar. Both teams have their biggest stars leading the push. Where these teams differ is that Tampa Bay's biggest strength is its defense. They keep the score low and win close defensive games, often by no more than a single goal. Hell, they won the last Pittsburgh game via a Rolison shutout 1-0. Washington, on the other hand, has a very strong offense. Their games were high-scoring affairs, and if you look at the stats, wow. They'll find it harder to score on Tampa Bay than they did on New York. Then again, New York had an elite goalie in Henrik Lundqvist, and they had no problem lighting him up. Washington in 6. The Philadelphia Flyers versus the Boston Bruins. This is the match to watch of the second round. And I am amped for this one. I mean, you take 2 big physical teams playing old style, grinded out Canadian hockey. Oh yeah. And just thinking of the matchups we can get here. Zdeno Chara versus Chris Pronger. Milan Lucic versus Scott Hartnell. Daniel Carcillo versus whatever poor sap he decides to sucker punch. Classics! I have goosebumps just thinking about it. Whichever team survives this series, while they will be banged up, has to be the odds-on favorite to represent the East. They're just too big and mean. A big issue in this series will be the goalie question in Philly. I mean, like I said, all three guys have been questioned as the guy in the series against Buffalo, while there's no question in Boston's net. You will be hard-pressed to find a more solid goalie than Tim Thomas. But in the end, I just think Philly has more offensive weapons in their arsenal than Boston. I mean, you have Danny Briere, Claude Giroux, and Ville Laino among a host of others, including two big producers that haven't even gotten on the board yet in Mike Richards and Jeff Carter. Get those guys going and Philly is very dangerous. As long as Boucher can be stable in net, I gotta like Philly. Then again, that's easier said than done. I mean, you're basically asking a career backup to start playing like a #1 goalie and completely change his career trajectory. Anyway, this one will be down to the wire, but Philadelphia will pull it out in 7. On to the West we go, the Vancouver Canucks versus the Nashville Predators. These two teams both accomplished something amazing in the first round. Vancouver avoids epic disaster by digging in and stopping the tidal wave of Chicago momentum, while Nashville really sprang to life to pull it out over the Ducks with stars like Shea Weber, Jordan Tutu, and Mike Fisher putting up big numbers. Good job, your jerseys are still the ugliest thing I've ever seen. They make me want to vomit. Which incidentally is the color of your third jersey. But the series between Nashville and Anaheim was just a showcase in awful goaltending. Ray Emery was bad for Anaheim, but Pekka Rinne wasn't much better. Neither goalie had a save percentage above 900. So Rinne wasn't good, he just wasn't as bad as Emery. And when you're facing a team with the firepower of the Sedin twins, the defense of Ehrhoff and Bieksa, and the strength of Luongo on the back end, that isn't good enough. Vancouver in 5. The San Jose Sharks versus the Detroit Red Wings. Two perennial high seeds meet up in what could be a pivotal matchup. And this series is the one I'm most hesitant to pick a winner in. The Sharks struggled greatly with their cross-state rivals the Kings, while the Wings easily handled the Coyotes, who didn't put up much of a fight. If you look at the stats, both teams have good goal distribution among their forwards. With the Sharks, Pavelski's doing his thing, Marlowe's chipping in. Hey, even Thornton has a couple of goals under his belt and seems to be breaking the curse. While on the Wings, they're rolling like they always do in the playoffs. One thing that could play a factor is the layoff. The Wings were the only team in the first round to sweep, and they've been sitting for almost a week longer than San Jose. The Sharks are loosened up and have their juices flowing fresh off a win, while the Wings have been going stale on the shelf. Good teams can get over inertia. Can the Wings do it? But like a lot of these series, this one could come down to, what else, goaltending. And hey, you gotta like the Sharks when you hear Stanley Cup champ Antti Niemi. Until you remember that Jimmy Howard is quickly turning into one of the league's best. Also, Niemi hasn't really been on his game. A save percentage below 900 is a bad sign, especially when that's against the 7th seed. If you can't get your save percentage above 900 against the Kings, you won't be able to do it against the Wings. Detroit in 6. So there you have it. Those are my predictions. Enjoy the games. I'll see you on the other side of round 2. Go Canucks!